Good morning from Christchurch, New Zealand, and welcome to the This is New Zealand webinar, currently beamed out to the world. My name is Bore Chum. I'm the Managing Director of Migration Associates. We have an office based in the UK and New Zealand, and I'll be co-presenting this presentation with my colleague Rachel, who is in fact in London. Rachel.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good.
So the purpose of this seminar and webinar, the webinar, is mainly to go through and to educate you on life in New Zealand. A lot of you have a lot in common. Most of you are probably looking to make the move for a better lifestyle, and I can assure you that the lifestyle in New Zealand is fantastic. Here in Christchurch this morning, we're looking for a very sunny day. And it's been very, very warm in the summer. So, you know, what we'd like to do is educate you in this webinar and also answer some of the queries as part of your move. And obviously that's going to help assist you with your move. Rachel, can you give yourself an introduction in terms of what your role is in this webinar?
Yeah, sure. So I am obviously from New Zealand as well, but I'm living here in the UK. I've been over here for 4 years now, but I work for New Zealand Skills in Demand as a candidate manager. So my role is basically to help find work in New Zealand with some of the roles that we deal with. But I'll be running through the slideshow with Bore and also be talking about how I can help potentially with your job hunt while you go over to New Zealand as well.
Fantastic. Okay, so just a quick rundown on the webinar and the schedule itself. We will give you an overview of New Zealand that will take approximately 30 minutes. Rachel will go through how to get a job in New Zealand, which is a very important part of the immigration process. I myself will go through the immigration process itself, and then we'll give you an opportunity to ask some questions and for us to answer those. During the webinar, we do have Susanna Dyson, who's also based in London. She can also answer questions on the chat room that you've got there. So feel free to ask any questions during the webinar. So we'll just go straight into it. New Zealand in numbers. Well, the population of New Zealand is approximately 4.5 million. About a third of the population live in Auckland. We have a very multicultural society. 69% of those are white New Zealanders. We have about 15% who are Maori, about 9% who are Asian, and 6.9%, around 7% who are Maori non-Maori or Pacific Islanders. So if you've seen our rugby team, the All Blacks, you'll see that we are very multicultural. And we have a fantastic heritage from the Maori and celebrate that culture. And we're very diverse. So a lot of applicants who we've assisted go over to New Zealand have found it very easy to fit in to New Zealand society, and there is obviously multiculturalism as part of that. In terms of the weather?
Yep, so in regards to the weather, I mean, that's a big sort of game changer for a lot of you, especially if you're in the UK. New Zealand has got mild temperatures, sort of moderately high rainfall, depending on whereabouts in the country you are. New Zealand's climate is dominated by two main geographical features, which is the mountains and the seas. January and February are the warmest months, and July is the coldest month of the year. December, it starts to get quite warm, which is really great for Christmas as well. In summer, the average maximum temperature ranges between 20 to 30 degrees, and in winter it can be between 10 to 15 degrees. And in regards to our sort of two major cities, Auckland is the largest city in New Zealand, and Christchurch is the biggest city in the South Island. Auckland's got quite a warm, temperate climate, and they have quite hot, humid summers and sort of, you know, mild, damp winters. Christchurch is a lot drier and can be a lot cooler, especially in the winter when, sometimes it can falter below 0 degrees at night. Looking at the rainfall table though, you'll notice that Auckland, for example, has got a lot more rainfall in a year than London, which is quite surprising, but the sunshine hours, it's close to doubling what London gets. So it's, Auckland and Christchurch is definitely a good place to be in regards to the sunshine hours and the weather.
In terms of housing, now this is a very big change. New Zealand houses are a lot different from the houses all around the world. And certainly, having come back to Christchurch, generally we have standalone houses made of timber, as you can see, and with a real indoor-outdoor feel. So you'll see there the dining table outside and also the barbecue, which are very key features in New Zealand houses with that indoor-outdoor living. And it's really important that you do look into housing because it's going to be a big change in your lifestyle and what New Zealand can offer you. In terms of renting a home, we would always encourage applicants to rent a home, before buying, just to get an idea of, your surroundings and the areas. Most rental properties are unfurnished. You'll get the normal chattels such as ovens and carpet and curtains. Rent is normally paid weekly, and 4 weeks bond is paid in advance. So it's really important you do have some money set aside when you're looking to rent. The landlord pays the council tax or rates, and this is included in the rental price. So in some countries, you may have a tax that the tenant pays, but in New Zealand, the actual landlord pays that. In some areas in New Zealand, the tenant doesn't pay for water usage either. Okay, we would advise tenants to get home and contents insurance just to protect against theft and fire. And these are some very good websites for you to look at in terms of looking at buying and renting houses. It's trademe.co.nz/property and realestate.co.nz. Now these links will be sent to you post-seminar, but any links that we provide in this webinar would be really, really good for you to take a note of and have a look at. In terms of the rental prices, in terms of the average, it would really depend on where you're living. As you can see, Auckland's more expensive than the likes of somewhere like Dunedin or Ashburton, who are in the South Island. Obviously, Auckland Central is a lot more expensive, and that's just prevalent in most big cities around the world. But you'll see, and this is in New Zealand dollars, that, for instance, in Christchurch, a 3-bedroom house is around 460 on a weekly basis. So sometimes it's very hard to kind of understand your cost of living, and I would always encourage you to look at start point of looking at how much you make a week here in New Zealand and work backwards. It's very hard to kind of convert into your own currency, because the lifestyle and cost of living is a lot different. But that should give you a good understanding of the cost. And again, have a look at TradeMe and you'll see some of the costs, market rate in terms of where you're looking to go. In terms of buying a home, very easy to do in New Zealand. Like I said before, most of our houses are built of wood. The difference is we don't really have a lot of central heating or double glazing in the older houses, but the newer houses do. In order to look for property in New Zealand, there are special features in the papers, and there's also open homes in the weekend where you can look at the property and get a feel and go inside. When you're buying a house, you've got to make sure that you fulfill the conditions. So you always get a contract that's subject to finance and title search and building inspection. Really, really important you look into that, and the real estate agents can help you with that. Big difference, there's no chains in New Zealand when you're looking to buy, so you technically, if you have someone looking to sell and they're happy with your offer, you could nearly have that, really have that place within 4 weeks. So it happens really quickly, and currently auction is a very common way of buying and selling, and you've got to have met the conditions before going to auction, and basically that is just competition on the day, highest bidder gets it. So it can be quite daunting, but it's really difficult to get a feel with how much you're going to buy the house for, but the agent will give you some sort of indication on what the likelihood of that selling for the specific property. In terms of median house prices, again, you'll see, Auckland topping the list there. Obviously, that's a third of our population lives there, so there's a lot of demand in housing. In fact, with that demand goes a lot of construction work up there at the minute with Auckland growing, so there's obviously, and Rachel will speak about the opportunities there. And then you also see in Christchurch the house price there of around 445,000 New Zealand dollars. Just bear in mind that you will need a 20% deposit to purchase a house. That's generally what the banks need for you to actually put a deposit on and finance that. In healthcare,
so in regards to healthcare in New Zealand, the New Zealand public health system provides free public hospital treatments, healthcare during pregnancy and childbirth, as well as subsidies on GP visits and prescription medicine. Whether you're covered under the public health system or not, you'd be best to talk to Migration Associates. So Bore and his team about what you're covered for and what you're entitled to. We do in New Zealand have 40 public hospitals throughout New Zealand, and we also have something called the Accident Compensation Corporation, which is also known as ACC. This is a really good organisation that we have in New Zealand because we don't really sort of believe in the suing culture, I suppose. So if you were to have an accident, say you're out in the weekend and you're playing rugby or football or something like that and you injure yourself, your employer pays a levy towards ACC and you're able to claim from them up to 80% of your income. So good peace of mind if something happens while you're out and about enjoying the Kiwi lifestyle. We do also have private healthcare as well. A lot of Kiwis elect to have private health insurance as well. They can get treatment straight away, for non-urgent conditions. There are a lot of insurance policies with different premiums. Kiwis that take out private health insurance are still entitled to free public health services for accident and emergency care. Healthfunds.org.nz is a really good information on different private health providers as well in New Zealand. And having a look here, this gives you an idea of the basic cost of healthcare in New Zealand. GP visits, a lot of GPs won't charge if you've got, children under the age of 6. But again, just check with Migration Associates about, what kind of cover you would get. The good thing about doctors in New Zealand is that you're not restricted on postcode, like what you may be here in the UK, for example. You can travel far and wide if you've got a particular doctor that you want to deal with. There are also subsidised prescriptions as well available for, children under 6 and over 6 years and older. The dentist can be a tad bit expensive in New Zealand, so we do recommend maybe going and having a checkup before you look at going to New Zealand, because it might be cheaper to get a checkup in your home country than before you head to New Zealand, like particularly if you're here maybe in the UK with the NHS.
Thanks, Rachel. In terms of education, I'm not too sure how many of you have children, but the education system in New Zealand is recognised worldwide from early childhood to tertiary education. So the primary and secondary schooling age is from 6 to 16. Most children commence school on their 5th birthday, and so that doesn't matter what time that birthday is. Once they hit 5, they start school, which is a big day. In terms of, in most cases, it's state funded, so it's free secular education. There is private schooling which you can pay for, but generally the state schooling education is very of a high standard, and renowned worldwide. We have years 1 to 13 NCEA, and in terms of zoning in certain cities, if you live in a certain area, you can qualify for certain schools, so that it may affect the price of your property. If you're looking at an area, just make sure the schooling and where you live, you're able to obviously apply for that school. In terms of the term dates, we a little bit different. We the kids start at the end of January through to middle of April. Term two starts in late April to the beginning of July. Term 3 starts in middle of July and ends in the middle of September. And the last tiring term of the year is from mid-October to mid-December. Of note, we have our summer holidays in that December period. And what you'll find is that most employers will shut up shop for a good couple of weeks, and most parents would take leave off during that Christmas period. And they would probably go on holiday with the family for a good couple of weeks. So New Zealand from the middle of December to the middle of January is relatively quite relaxing. And if you're living up in Auckland, it's a good time to be in Auckland because it's so peaceful. And everyone just takes a break from the year that's just gone by. So a really good time, and then back into it in the middle of at the end of January. Our primary schooling years 1 to year 6, okay. Our high school years 9 to year 13, along with all the qualifications that you get at secondary school, and then intermediate school is from year 7 to year 8. Okay, now some schools have all those 3 within them. In terms of from primary to intermediate, you'll find that they're mostly rural schools, and some schools in the city would only have primary, and intermediate or just primary. So really important that if you're looking at moving, understanding this schooling system, and I would just give schools a call. You know, a lot of principals are happy to hear from you. If you're visiting New Zealand, give a school a call and see if you can actually visit the actual school, and I'm sure that they will be more than happy to accommodate you. In terms of universities, we have 8 universities, 20 higher education polytechs and institutes of technologies. In terms of getting student loans, once you've got permanent residency, you will be eligible for a student loan after a certain period of time. And the cost of the fees really determined by what you're studying. So if I give you an example, an arts degree is approximately $3,000 a year, whereas a medical degree is $10,000 a year. Now those costs are very competitive worldwide, and the thing that I can say about higher education in New Zealand, because of our population, it's not demand driven, i.e. it is pretty accessible. Obviously, if you're looking to study medicine, you need to get the marks, whereas some other countries in the world, because of the population, it's very hard to get into some universities. So overall, it's very accessible and a very good high level of education in that post-secondary school education system. So some useful websites. Again, we will provide these websites to you.
So in regards to driver's licenses, we drive on the left-hand side of the road in New Zealand, and the minimum age to apply for your license is 16 years of age, which probably seems quite young to a lot of you, but New Zealand's quite a car-heavy nation. We've got public transport, but it isn't as great as it is, here in the UK, and I'm sure other parts of the world. So we've got 3 stages of the licensing system in New Zealand. There's your learner license, which you sit a theory test, and this is when you're 16 and you're starting out. You then go for your restricted, which is when you can start driving by yourself and doing a lot more practice. And then your full license is the final sort of stage of it, and once you've got your full license, you're able to drive wherever you want to and have that freedom. If you hold a current and valid overseas driver's license, though, you can drive in New Zealand for a period of 12 months from the date that you arrive in New Zealand. Once you've been in the country for a year, then you would need to look at swapping it over to a Kiwi driver's license. And you can apply at a driving licensing agent to convert to a New Zealand driver's license. All you need is your valid driver's license, an application form. You'd need to get your eye test, and then there's a fee that you need to pay, which is around $150, $160. And depending on where in the world you're from, you may need to do further driving tests, but you would need to double check with the local testing agency. Now, in regards to cost of living, which is another big thing as well, some things are going to be more expensive in New Zealand due to the lack of consumer power and distance. You know, we are a small country. We are quite far away from the rest of everyone else. So, you know, you've got to take that in mind, but you will have a lot more time to, you know, go shopping and going and hunting down the bargains. 15% GST, which is our VAT on goods. And there's also the New Zealand tax rates on personal income are less than the OECD average, which is good. This table gives you an idea of the general costs. So petrol is $2 per litre, sort of as of February this year. You're looking at $2.20 for a postage stamp to the UK. Washing machines. Now, we say whiteware can be quite expensive in New Zealand. So if if you've got your own whiteware already, it's a really good idea to maybe have a look at shipping those items over. And I'll be able to give you details of a shipping company later in the presentation. Looking at televisions, you know, for example, $1,000, $600, you know, not too reasonable. So they're a lot easier to buy in New Zealand. Whereas white goods, yeah, slightly more expensive. And here we've got a grocery comparison with Canada, South Africa and the UK. So we've got prices from Countdown, which is sort of our Tesco's equivalent here in the UK. It does probably seem quite expensive, but the joy with being in New Zealand is that you've got more time to, you know, go to the butchers and pick up your meat, go to the fruit and veg shop and, you know, get all those ingredients. You've got more time to shop around. And because you've got a lot more space in your homes as well, a lot of people will buy like big chest freezers and buy in bulk, which, you know, they find saves them a lot of money as well. So it's always good to, you know, shop around, and you definitely have the opportunity to do that in New Zealand.
So why move? You know, I think it's really hard to put into words why to move to New Zealand in a presentation such as this. And I guess the only thing I can really run through is through my personal experience. I lived in the UK for 10 years and my family and I moved back in April of last year. We've been here nearly close to 12 months. And it is all about lifestyle. You know, the quality of life here is fantastic. It's an easy pace of lifestyle. And the political environment and socially, everything's so stable. So in 2015, Mercer Quality of Life Survey pitched Auckland was ranked number 3 in the world, and that's amazing. You know, we think that Auckland's the biggest city in New Zealand. Why move there? And yet it's ranked number 3 in the world, which is fantastic. And that was based on a lot of factors, including housing, recreation, education, and political environment. In 2016, the Mercer Cost of Living Survey, Auckland was ranked 61. Where the most expensive city was ranked number 1. So Sydney was 31, Wellington was number 83, and London was number 12. So it is all about lifestyle. You know, in terms of why move, and you know, everyone has their own different reasons for moving. But in terms of our economy, it's very robust at the minute. Job growth is expected to continue, and there are 72,000 more people employed now than there were a year ago. Okay, and there's still going to be severe shortage across all occupations in New Zealand. Education, you know, if I give you a stat, New Zealand 15-year-olds scored ahead of those in the UK on reading, maths and science in a UN report in 2015. Like I said, socio-political, I mean, there is a lot of things happening in the UK and the US at the minute, which is making things unstable. You know, whereas in New Zealand, you know, corruption's, you know, we're the least corrupt nation, and that kind of issues with the politics of things, it's not here in New Zealand, and it's fantastic because it's not in the forefront of your mind about, you know, whether or not the country is, you know, going downhill, if that makes sense. And also the landscape, having come back, you just appreciate the beauty of our landscape. From going up to Hammer Springs, which is a thermal reserve, the landscape is just absolutely stunning, and it's such a privilege to be in this country. In terms of population, listen, having lived in the UK's population was massive, and that really affected a lot in terms of lifestyle, getting to places, going to the supermarket. We have a very small population relative to the size of our country, and that size of our population makes it really easy to spend time with your family, because you're not taking an hour to get to work. It's only 15 minutes or whatever it may be. And because of that small population, we just have so much space. Over Christmas, I went up to Auckland for our holiday, and to the north of Auckland, there were beautiful beaches, and there were hardly any people in them, experiencing that. So we've just got so much space, and like I said, the landscape is fantastic. And innovation, we are an innovative country, and also a really PC country in terms of the fact that we've had women who were prime ministers, and giving women the right to vote, the first country. So we are very progressed in that front, and we are proud of that heritage and that innovation. Okay, so no matter where you are in New Zealand, you're approximately 15 minutes from somewhere spectacularly beautiful, and that is the case. We on Waitangi weekend, which is a New Zealand day, if that makes sense, we were able to, I was lucky enough to play golf in the morning, and then we went mountain biking with the family in the afternoon. So you can do that, it's not impossible, and that helps with that lifestyle. Roger Stone, who migrated to Christchurch in July 2012, stating we're only 30 minutes drive from the beach and just over an hour from the skiing mountains. So that lifestyle and that outdoor lifestyle is accessible for you and your family, and it's a big quality in life. Okay, so this represents a lot about the Kiwi lifestyle in the summer, certainly in that December period. The boat, especially up in Auckland, as I discovered just recently, the Batch, which is a holiday home where people go to over the Christmas break, and the barbecue and the outdoor living. Okay, so it is really, you can have that lifestyle, which is really, really important.
Cool, thank you, Bore. So now I'm going to be talking about finding work in New Zealand and how we may be able to help with your job hunt. So we are a New Zealand-based company, and we've got an office here in London where I'm working, and also my colleague Susanna, and then we also have an office in Christchurch where my colleague Glenn is based, and then we also have Guy, who's based up in Auckland. And we basically came about after the February earthquakes in Christchurch, which caused a lot of devastation. There needed to be a lot of work that needed to be done, so that's why we were set up to work with large reputable New Zealand companies, and we've placed in the last 4 years around 450 candidates. We've helped them find jobs in New Zealand, and alongside with Migration Associates, managed to get them in the country. So the Christchurch development, Christchurch is the main reason why we're here, because there is a lot of rebuild work going on. They're thinking it's a $40 billion project, likely to take at least 10-15 years. We're 6 years on now from the earthquake, and only 40% of we're only 40% of the way through the rebuild, so there's still a lot more work to be done. We need so many more skilled tradespeople in Christchurch doing the work and helping out everyone. The central city is going to be largely redeveloped and rebuilt, and there's a lot of key projects going on, like a new entertainment centre and things like that. There are also lots of new homes that will be needing to be built in the next 5 years as well. There's been a lot of infrastructure repair, but there's still a lot more to go as well. And as I said, Christchurch was the main reason why we started, but that's not to say there's not a lot of other construction work going on in the rest of the country. Auckland and Tauranga are having a huge population growth, so residential and commercial building consents have reached, you know, their highest annual total in over a decade, which is excellent. The growth in residential activity in Auckland is really good, because in 2017 they think there are going to be more homes built in Auckland than ever before. In Tauranga, they're estimating that they're going to spend around $62 million on, you know, building new properties, building commercial buildings, and there'll be consents around 254. So that's really going off in New Zealand, which is great. So what we do at Skills in Demand is we help you get all your paperwork together, and it is quite a sort of paper heavy process. So what we need from you is an up-to-date CV, and what we can do is we can email you a New Zealand template so you know it's up-to-date and what New Zealand employers are going to want to see. We get you to fill out a candidate briefing document, which is basically giving us, you know, as much information about you as possible, you know, whether you're going by yourself, whether you're traveling with family, you know, lots of things to think about. We also need written references from former employees and or clients, and we also do verbal references as well. We also get electronic copies of all your qualifications as well to pass on to the recruiters in New Zealand. We need your Skype username, because the great thing is, instead of having to fly out to New Zealand and have face-to-face interviews, which not everyone can do, we can set you up with a Skype interview. So before you've even left, you know, where you reside, you will know whether you've got, you know, a job offer or not, if we've been able to help you. And probably the biggest thing, and this is where it's really handy having, you know, working with Bore, is that you really need to understand the visa process as well. It's, you know, really important that you know how you can get to the country, how long you can stay, and just what all your options are. But what we're currently looking for, I mean, you might not see your occupation on this list, and don't be alarmed, because we are only just a small company, and we do only deal with a select few occupations, but we do have a couple of job hunting websites that you can look up, but the main occupations we look for are the ones listed here, so all quite construction focused, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, and then we can also help with certain roles like IT professionals, so software developers, chartered accountants, HVAC engineers, and things like that as well. So I guess the main process is, the first thing to do is to learn about New Zealand and, you know, decide if this is what you want to do, because it is a big move. You need to overcome any potential issues. So do you have a house to sell, or are you going to rent it out? Do you need to close down a business? Do you need to, you know, check that your partner and kids are on board? Do you have elderly family members that you need to think of? You need to work out when you want to arrive in New Zealand. We work to a 3-month time frame, so if you get a job offer, you're expected to be in the country within 3 months. So we'll kind of work with you to make sure you're all sorted. We'll help you gather all your documents, so we need them sent through just as quickly as possible. And you need to get your working holiday visa if you're under 31, or talk to Migration Associates if you need a permanent job offer for, you know, your work visa. We've also got a list of really helpful partners as well, which I'll talk about later on, because they're a really good resource to make your move a lot easier. And then after that, after all your research, it's just booking your tickets and getting on the plane to a better lifestyle.
Thanks, Rachel. It sounds very simple, but you know, a lot of the people that we've worked with previously have been planning this move, and some may take 3 months, some may take 6 months, some may take 12 months. And therefore, it's important that you do ensure that you do as much research as possible, and that you understand what the timeframes are. In terms of the visa process, you have to navigate that, and we're here to help you with that. And I think the most important thing that we need to probably, I guess, put across is that there are so many people looking to immigrate to New Zealand now. The government last year in October made some changes to visa policy, and they've made it harder to get into New Zealand because of that demand. Okay, so it really is going to be for you understanding your immigration strategy, what visas you can apply for. Most of the visas you'll need a job offer for, so work with the guys from Skills in Demand. Outside of New Zealand Skills in Demand jobs, we are still seeing people getting jobs as in IT, in nursing, in healthcare, and also in education. So there is whilst Skills in Demand concentrate mainly on construction, white collar and blue collar, we're seeing from our clients that there's a lot of other jobs in other sectors. So don't be too disheartened in terms of that list. New Zealand's open for skilled workers across the board. Okay, who are Migration Associates? Well, we are based in the UK and in New Zealand. We have 4 licensed advisors. We've assisted over 2,000 families and individuals to work and live in New Zealand. We specialise only in New Zealand immigration, and we're really proud of our strategic relationship with New Zealand Skills in Demand. As I said before, most of you will need a job offer to get through the process. Okay, and that really starts with what we call a New Zealand visa evaluation. So if you haven't already done so, complete our online form, and we will be able to provide you with an evaluation. Now, this evaluation will assist you to understand your visa eligibility. Okay, what visa do I apply for? How long will it take? What are the costs? Okay, so we'll confirm individually and tailor it to your circumstances what visa you can apply for. Okay, and I think it's really important to get an understanding of the costs and the timeframes so you can budget and also plan the move. If you're a candidate for Skills in Demand, we will provide them with an immigration report, which essentially tells them whether or not we think you can get a visa and what that timeframe is. In terms of visa types, we'll go through this very briefly. The main one is the skilled migrant category. That's to get residency. So this is the best visa, and that's points based. It's determined on what qualifications you've got, work experience, age, etc., and mainly dependent on a job offer. It's for people aged 20 to 55. You've got to have good character and medical. So part of that process is getting police certificates in the medical. You will need to lodge an expression of interest, and you'll need 160 points for that now, and that's the change in October. So the points, there was a points increase. Okay. Once you've lodged your expression of interest and are selected or invited to apply, you would then lodge an application. That could take up to 4 months to process. Okay. Like I said, there were changes in October of last year, and there will be further changes this year with potentially the new government with the elections and with the refining of that skilled migrant category policy to make sure that we're encouraging the right people to get into the country. So this year and at the end of last year has been a big change to the skilled migrant category. And for those looking to apply for residency, speak to us. We can provide an evaluation for you, and we'll email you about this evaluation. But it's really important you do get advice on this process. Another way to get residency is work to residency visa with an accredited employer. You must have an offer of employment of full-time for 2 years. The employer must be accredited. You must be earning 55k or more and meet the health and character requirements. After working for 24 months, you can then apply for residency. So the one before that, the skilled migrant, you get residency outright, whereas this visa here, you'll need to work for that employer for 24 months before getting residency. Okay, the actual temporary visa is approved within 15 working days. Okay, now if you get a job offer, obviously the employer cannot wait until your residency comes through if you're applying for residency. So 99% of the people who get a job offer would apply for a work visa. Okay, you need an offer of employment with a New Zealand employer, qualifications and work experience related to the role. There must be no New Zealand citizens or residents available. You must meet the health and character requirements. The period or the validity of the visa would depend on the skill set. So For some visas, it's 12 months. For some visas, it's 3 years. For some visas, it's 5 years. Okay, but we will advise you of that. If you have an employment arrangement with employer A, you get to New Zealand and then you get a job offer with employer B, you can vary the conditions of your visa to work with employer B. So the point of that is that you're not stuck with employer A. A temporary visa is processed within 20 working days. And in Canterbury, in terms of the area, they did change the visa process to make sure that they can get skilled labour into that Canterbury region. But as Rachel said, with Canterbury still being busy, there are still other parts of the country that are really, really busy, such as Auckland, Wellington, and the Bay of Plenty, Queenstown, etc. So we would expect that there may be other work visa changes in specific regions to try to cope with that demand for people across the board. Now, if you're under the age of 31, New Zealand has a working holiday visa scheme for each country. And I'll just give you an example here of the British citizens working holidays scheme. You get 23 or 12 months validity, and you can work for 12 months on that working holiday visa. When you're in New Zealand, you can convert to a work visa. So we will advise you of what type of visa it is, whether or not there is a reciprocal arrangement with your country if you're under 31. And this is a great way for young people to come and see New Zealand work and convert into a work visa and stay a little bit longer, approved quite quickly within 2 to 5 days. Like I said before, really important to understand your immigration strategy, how all these visas apply to you, put together that strategy in place, because it could be a 6-month or 12-month strategy, obtain all the documentation, and really just understand the timeframes and costs, and keeping abreast of changes. Like I said, this year will be a big year of change, and it's really important if you hit strategy 1, that may change to strategy 2 because of the changes in policy. Okay, how to apply for residency alongside work visa or work visa with a working holiday visa. So we'll go through that and build that strategy with you. In terms of medicals and police certificates, you must have an acceptable standard of health, so you'll need to supply medicals, and you'll need to supply your police certificates also as part of your application. If you do have some misdemeanors in the past, you need to make sure that you let us know. Okay, disclosure is very much required. For some occupations, you'll need registration. If you do, this is a separate part of the process to the visa that happens beforehand, and a lot of employers won't consider you unless you've got a registration in place. Okay, so it's an extra step. So for instance, the nursing process, you need to get an English language test and get the required level, and that may take you 3 to 4 months. So it's really important you understand that step and get that registration, or else employers won't look at you. You need that registration, of course, to legally work in that occupation. We can advise you of that process and assist you. Okay, why use us? I think the most important thing is, obviously we've got an office here in New Zealand and in the UK, which is working really, really well. I've got a checklist there of why you would use us, but the main thing is to make sure that you can get through the visa process, to save your time, to mitigate against delay, to make sure Immigration New Zealand are processing your applications correctly, to make sure that we work towards an immigration strategy. We deal with a lot of paperwork, and the ultimate goal is to save you time and limit your stress levels. And we will also push you along the visa process. So our job is to make things easier. We'll liaise with New Zealand Skills and other recruitment agencies to make sure things go through with your employer also. Okay, my biggest recommendation is to obviously have a consultation with us, complete our form, and then have all your queries addressed, because it is going to be the biggest decision that you'll make in terms of your move. So really important you understand it. Okay, we have some social media channels that you can get some useful information. It's all about researching, research, and getting the advice from people like ourselves and our partners. Okay, so really hard to kind of in 40 minutes to give you an idea of this move, but hopefully it's given you a flavour. And what we'd like to do now is open up a question and answer session where you'll have the opportunity to ask some questions on our chat, and myself and Rachel will do our best we can with answering those questions. So does anyone have any questions? Okay, so Bronwyn, I've got one there. How long will you need to be tied into a company for work permit before I can go freelance over there? Generally, if you want to be self-employed, you want to get residency in place. Okay, once you've got residency, you can then work on a self-employed basis.
Bore, I can see Leonard's asking about the costs of visas and things like that. Is there sort of a...
It's really hard, Leonard, to give you a cost without knowing who you are and your situation, because everyone's different. So you may be a working holiday visa candidate, and therefore the cost will be a lot lower, or you may have a family where the cost is a lot higher. So complete our form and we can run through the costs with you. You know, it is going to be a costly move. You know, you've got your visa costs, you've got flights, etc. And what we would always advise clients to do is budget for this and save some money. Because you're going to be moving you and potentially your family and your belongings across the other side of the world. So it is important that you do budget, but we can give you a good exact figure of what that's going to be once we've had a look into your situation.
Cool. I've just seen a question come through from Chris in regards to transport. Like I touched on earlier, we recommend, you know, making sure you've got a driver's license before you head out to New Zealand, because it is a lot easier to buy your own car. But if you are flying into one of the biggest cities, there are also lots of car rentals at the airports. So even if you just want to hire a car for a week or two, or even a couple of days until you get yourself sorted, that's a really good idea as well.
Fantastic. Bronwyn, you've just got another question to your last question. So the most important thing is for us to look at your eligibility for residency, okay? And then we can then understand how long it's going to take and provide you with the costing of that. Okay, so ultimately, residency is the highest level that you can get, which will lead to citizenship. But like I said, with the changes at the end of last year and expected changes this year, it's going to be important for all of you who want residency to look into that.
Can you get Bore to answer Galveston?
Bore, I think there was a question in regards to
changing visas.
Changing visas when you're changing jobs.
Yes, you do. So that's the variation of conditions, Galveston. So, like I said, you can be employed with employer A on a work visa, and if you get a job offer with employer B, you apply to Immigration New Zealand to vary the conditions of the visa. So it is an application made to Immigration New Zealand, and once that's approved, you can then work with employer B. Okay. In terms of, once you've got your visa, you should really look to get to New Zealand within the space of 3 months. I mean, ultimately, if you've got a work visa in place, the employer will want you out there as quickly as possible. Okay. If you're not prepared to go as quickly as possible, you really do jeopardize that job offer. Okay. So you need to be prepared, and that's what Rachel was going on about before. You need to understand your timeframes, where you can go, because you are expected, if you get a job offer, to get out there very, very quickly. So once we lodge your work visa, it should take about 4 weeks to process, and then you should have the necessary visa to then commence your trip out there and start employment. In terms of public transport, I mean, I was living in London. The London transport was fantastic. Having come back to New Zealand now, I've got stuck in my own ways and rely heavily on a car. I have recently just jumped on a bike to get to places, and that also helps, especially if there's a bit of traffic. So the public transport's good, but it's not as great as some of the bigger cities in the world. So we are really dependent on getting in our cars and seeing and getting to places in our cars.
Chris, you're asking if there's a place you can buy a car quite easily. TradeMe, so trademe.co.nz is a really fantastic website for buying cars, all sorts of secondhand items. You can find rental properties on there as well. So I would recommend checking out trademe.co.nz in regards to buying either a new car or a secondhand car once you arrive in New Zealand.
Fantastic. Well, I think what we'll do is we will summarise, you know, in you know, this whole webinar. It's all about lifestyle. You know, it really is. We have fantastic lifestyle here. For some of you, that's going to be an option for you in terms of, you know, whether or not you've got the skill set to get that job offer. In closing, you know, I think the most important thing for us is we'd like to thank our sponsors, the Bank of New Zealand and Migration Cover. They are critical in terms of supporting us with these webinars, which we hold on a monthly basis over the 2017 webinar schedule. In terms of you know, looking at moving to New Zealand, I think it's really important that you look at the insurance side of things and visit migrationcover.com in terms of looking at available insurance, and that could include medical insurance and also travel insurance also. And also protecting your move in terms of your migration. So they have some fantastic policies available for you, and I would encourage you that. In terms of setting a bank account up, definitely contact the Bank of New Zealand, and I will let Rachel just go through that in the next slide here with the contact people. So it's really important that you do get your assistance, and also you know, get as much information about this move, because there's a lot to it. And trust me, having been back to New Zealand, that whole move was very stressful, and I'm a Kiwi. So my advice is get as much information as possible for the move.
Yep, so here's a list of our key partners that we deal with and will make your life so much easier when you are making the move over to New Zealand. So Matt Williams at Moneycorp will be able to help you figure out how you're going to transfer all your money over to New Zealand, you know, the best currency rate possible at the time. Michaela Duncan at Bank of New Zealand will be able to, you know, talk to you about setting up a bank account. Maybe you're looking at buying a house in New Zealand, so I can talk to you about mortgages and things like that. John Moynes and the team at PSS Removals are great. If you're thinking about pretty much packing up your, you know, your entire house and shipping it over to New Zealand, they're the people to talk to. And then Chris Galway at Migration Cover is fantastic. He'll be able to talk to you about a great insurance policy that he can offer for you when you're looking at heading over to New Zealand as well. But like sorry.
Yeah, big thank you for our sponsors. And in terms of, you know, if you need any information from myself or the partners or from Rachel and her team, we will send you an email with all the links to the websites that we've provided and information of this the webinar. Please do get in contact with us and feel free to ask any questions that you may have. But we'd like to have this opportunity to say thank you very much for your time, and we hope you seriously consider your move to New Zealand, and it'd be great for you to enjoy that lifestyle in New Zealand, which is absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, everyone.